the Associated Press. It says the U.S. troops are leaving Niger. I'm gonna pronounce it as Niger. I may pronounce it as Niger sometimes, but Niger is what I'm gonna. I'm not French, so I'm not gonna use a French accent or whatever. U.S. says troops are leaving Niger bases this weekend and in August after coup. All right, so this is what you see oftentimes in African countries, and it's not just African countries, but it's primarily African countries. But anywhere the U.S. destabilizes, anywhere European colonial powers have destabilized, you'll see a lot of different coups. All right, again, we'll get into specifically because I said European, and the U.S. is not European. It's a different beast entirely. But there has been a lot of French activity there in the past, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But it said the U.S. are, the U.S. troops are leaving their Niger bases. All right, the U.S. will remove all of its forces and equipment from a small base in Niger this weekend, and fewer than 500 remaining troops will leave a critical drone base in the West African country in August, ahead of September 15 deadline set in an agreement with the new ruling junta. The American commander there said Friday, right? So America said, look, we're pulling out because that's the agreement that we made with their new ruler, all right? Air Force Major General Kenneth Ekman said in an interview that a number of small teams of 10 to 20 U.S. troops, including Special Operations Forces, have moved to other countries in West Africa, but the bulk of the forces will go to Europe, at least initially, right? So they're going to Europe to regroup or to go to Ukraine. All right, so we'll see where how that unfolds. Niger's ouster of American troops following a coup last year has broad ramifications for the U.S. because it is forcing troops to abandon the critical drone base that was used for counterterrorism missions in the Sahel, a vast region south of the Sahara Desert, where groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group operate, right? So you have probably some connections with Boko Haram there. And the region, so that's why the U.S. is like, oh, it's strategic for us to set up here. Ekman and other U.S. military leaders have said other West African nations want to work with the U.S. and may be open to an expanded American presence. He did not detail the locations, but other U.S. officials have pointed to the Ivory Coast and Ghana as examples. He said, look, if y'all don't want us here, we'll just move to other countries in the region, and we'll influence the region from those areas instead. All right. Instead of us boosting your military, we're going to go to one of your neighboring countries and boost their military instead. Ekman, who serves as the director for strategy at the U.S. Africa Command, is leading the U.S. military withdrawal from the small base at the airport in Niger's capital of Niamey and from the larger counterterrorism base in the city of Agadez. All right, so Agadez is a big city in Niger. All right, he said there will be a ceremony Sunday marking the completed pullout from the airport base, then the final 100 troops and the last C-17 transport aircraft will depart. And while I'm here, let's just so we can understand the region, let me look up a map of Niger real quick. Not Nigeria. Just so we understand where some of these cities are. All right. That one might be better. Okay, so Agadez is the northeast region. I'm trying to find a good map that isn't. Yeah, so let's open this image in a new tab, and this might help us. Okay, yeah. So, you see like Chad down here. We've talked about Chad in the past, I feel like. I don't know if we ever really went into Nigeria or these other regions, but Agadez is the northeastern region of Niger. And as you can see, Agadez being the capital of that province. You got Diffa, Zender, Maradi, Tahua, Dosso, and Niamey down here next to Burkina Faso and Benin. So, it's more, once you get here to the Agadez region, it's less populated, and it's, you're getting more Sahara territory at that point, all right? But all these other cities are more populated. So let's, if we need to refer back to this map, we can refer back to that map. All right. So, okay. So, under the junta agreement, 2/3 of U.S. troops and equipment must be out of the country by July 26th, right? So they said, hey, get a move on out of here, right? Ekman said that deadline, which forced the Pentagon to move quickly, is a key reason why U.S. Africa Command will complete its withdrawal of all 1,000 troops from Niger early. They said, hey, look, we made an agreement, and we're going to stick to that of leaving. All right, that's what they're saying, at least. But it also leaves a counterterrorism gap that the U.S. officials are struggling to fill as security threats from extremist groups in the Sahel grow. All right, so yeah, there's a lot of terrorism, quote unquote, in Africa, as far as like Boko Haram, other Islamic, groups, other, maybe even secular or Christian groups going on down there. We've talked about the instability in Africa before, as far as like with the Congo, for example, we talked about that. And even in the Sudan. The Sudan would be a more similar situation to what you got going on in Niger, all right? One of those groups, Jamaat Nusrat ul-Islam wa al-Muslimin, dang, that's a long name. Known as JNIM, that's easier. That acronym is definitely easier to say, easier to understand. It's active in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and is looking to expand into Benin and Togo. Those expansion locations could be used initially as hubs to rest, recuperate, get financing, and gather weapons, according to the U.S. officials, but the group also has increased attacks there. Niger was immensely helpful for us as a location because it was in the Sahel and it was adjacent to those areas where the threat is most concentrated, Ekman said. Now, he said the challenge is battling the insurgency while having to get access from outside Niger, which makes it more difficult. He said other coastal West African nations, and by the way, Niger is not coastal, it's landlocked. He said other coastal West African nations are concerned about the Sahel-based threats and want to talk about how they can partner with American forces, right? Like those other countries he mentioned earlier, Ghana, Benin, things like that, or places like that, I should say, Nigeria. Ekman added that the small teams of U.S. troops moving to other West African nations are not combat forces, but advisors, as well as special operations, personnel recovery, and intelligence and surveillance forces. Talks with other nations continue, and Ekman said some may be interested but not ready to allow in more U.S. troops. One example he said is Togo, which is southwest of Niger on the coast. All right, I believe we did see that right here. No, we didn't see Togo. It's actually on the other side of Burkina Faso, if I'm not mistaken. All right. In Togo, what I find is a partner that is friendly to the U.S., but that right now is unresolved on the degree they want the presence of any additional U.S. military personnel there. He said, my assessment was not yet. And see, the thing about these countries is that they're not as important enough for like the U.S. to invade, right? Because the U.S. has other things going on right now as far as the military support for Ukraine and the military support for the Israeli troops, all right? So these other conflicts going on, because there are always wars and rumors of wars, all right? Especially with the U.S., as far as the U.S. is concerned. The U.S. has to be the world police, all right? Or at least the U.S. military has felt that way for, since the Cold War. So these threats are less important in the eyes of the U.S., right? You don't see them going down there getting involved in the Congo situation that we talked about. That's far more troubling, all right? They're still pulling out a Niger, though. Speaking to the reporters from the Associated Press and Reuters from the U.S. Embassy in Niamey, Ekman said that while portable buildings and vehicles that are no longer useful will be left behind when U.S. troops leave Niger, a lot of larger equipment will be pulled out. For example, he said 18 4,000-pound generators worth more than $1 million each will be taken out of Agadez. They said, look, we're going to take out your generators. We're going to take everything. Everything that we brought you that was helping to stabilize this country, we're going to take it away now. Since you want the troops gone, we're just going to take away everything that we give you too. All right. Unlike the withdrawal from Afghanistan, he said the U.S. is not destroying equipment or facilities as it leaves. Right? He said we're not destroying it. We're just taking all our stuff back. All right. You can keep the facilities. We're just taking all the stuff that makes the facilities run. All right. Our goal in the execution is leave things in as good a state as possible. He said if we went out and left it a wreck or went out spitefully or we destroyed things as we went, we'd be foreclosing options for future security relations. You see that right there? So he said, look, we're not trying to burn the bridge to Niger, right? Because we like that strategic location. But, we're also, you're going to feel our presence as we leave, all right? Niger's ruling junta ordered U.S. forces out of the country in the wake of last July's ouster of the country's democratically elected president by mutinous soldiers. And see, where were the U.S. troops then? Where were they trying to defend the government affairs then? French forces had also been asked to leave as the junta turned to the Russian mercenary group Wagner for security assistance. Oh, here we see some alignment with BRICS, or with the BRICS nations at least. All right. Washington officially designated the military takeover as a coup in October, triggering U.S. laws restricting the military support and aid. You see that right there. So, it's crazy because the U.S. does coups all the time. Now, were the U.S. behind this coup? Probably not. This is probably the coup of a U.S. If not U.S. puppet, then a U.S. ally. All right. Ekman said he has been told that there are fewer than 100 troops at the base near Niamey, and that once they are done training Niger troops, they will also leave the country. Right. So that's what they said. We'll see. I don't know if I'll give a full update as to what's going on here, but yeah, we'll see if the Russian troops actually decide to leave, or if that becomes a more permanent thing with the country of Niger. So let's just talk a little bit about the history of this country before we actually get into the scriptures about this. All right. So we're not going to get into what they talk about, ancient archaeology and all that kind of stuff, but what I do want to point out is right here where it says by the 5th century BCE, right? So it could be before then, could be, by that time or around that time. Niger was part of the trans-Saharan trade routes connecting West African empires to the Mediterranean. The introduction, we're not talking about the camel. I mean, who cares? We're not going to go into prehistoric Niger. But we're going to get into a little bit more detail as far as the ancient history there. All right. By at least the 5th century, come on now. I hate when Wikipedia does that. But by at least the 5th century BCE, Carthage and Egypt became terminals for West African gold, ivory, and slaves trading salt, cloth, beads, and metal goods. With this trade, Niger was on the route between the empires of the Sahel and the empires of the Mediterranean basin. All right, so Niger was there in the middle of trade routes, all right, of trade routes between, like Egypt and Carthage. Egypt was a major hub of civilization, has been for thousands of years, and Carthage was on the rise around the 5th century BCE, which was the 400s BC. Trade continued into Roman times. Although there are classical, Trade continued into Roman times, although there are classical references to direct travel from the Mediterranean to West Africa. Most of the trade was conducted through middlemen who inhabited, I just need to stop highlighting this, and I'm sorry if y'all can't see where I'm at. I'll try to show through my mouse, but I can't highlight this. It's going crazy. Most of the trade was conducted through middlemen who inhabited the area, and so were aware of safe passages through the drying lands. All right. So why do I want to? Why am I pointing this out? Why am I pointing out the trade routes here? And we can go ahead and get it. Because in the age of Solomon, which was around 1000 BC, 900 BC, and we've talked about this before with the Canaanite Israelite connection, the Israelite Phoenician connection, I believe is what I called it. The Israelite Phoenician connection. All right. With that, there was lots of trade going on with the first inhabitants of West Africa. All right. And trade is probably not even the right word. The original inhabitants of these regions of West Africa were the ancient Canaanites and Israelites, all right? And from there, it kind of, this may not be what I'm looking for here. Ships of Tarshish. Yeah, I may be tripping here. Because this is talking about Ophir. I'm not necessarily talking about Ophir. But it's Solomon's Navy, though. This is talking about Solomon's Navy. Tarshish. Ships of Tarshish. Give me 1 second. Chronicles might be the route here. Give me 1 second here. Please excuse me. Please excuse me. It's not going to be in chapter 8 or even chapter 7. Maybe chapter 6. No, that's the temple itself. Maybe chapter 5 in 1 Kings. Maybe even be Chronicles. No, it's the preparation for the temple. No. I know it ain't chapter 4, I don't think, at least. No. No, it might be, actually. Now I'm looking here. No, because this is before his covenant with this is before his covenant with Hiram. Give me 1 second, y'all. Please excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah. I guess it is 2 Chronicles. Like I said, please excuse me. Please excuse me. It covers the same history, but some details are covered in the Chronicles that aren't covered in the Kings, and vice versa. So I'm going to read this here in 2 Chronicles 9 and verse 20. I might want to start with 20. No, in verse 21. So this is the navy of Solomon. We talked about this before when we talked about the Israelite-Phoenician connection. I thought it was 1 Kings 9 and 2 Chronicles 9. Please excuse me. But here in 2 Chronicles 9 and verse 21. For the king's ships went to Tarshish. Now Tarshish is said to be Spain. It could be like Sardinia or one of those islands close in the Mediterranean. But it's said to be Spain. For the king's ships went to Tarshish, right? And if you notice where Spain is, and let me just pull out a map here of the Mediterranean, if you're unfamiliar. Go on the... Well, I guess I could look at any of these, because most of these maps do show the Mediterranean in full. But let me just go to like a Peter's projection map. I like using those maps because they are more accurate, generally. More accurate than a Mercator map. But it's the same world map that you're familiar with. It's just, dimensions are a little different. But you see where Spain is, right? And this is what is said to be Tarshish. Tarshish could be one of these other islands here, but you see how Spain pretty much connects with Morocco, all right? That's what so it's referred to commonly these days as the Straits of Gibraltar right here, all right? It's how you get out of the Mediterranean. But you could dock in Spain and then in the same day or in the next couple days be in Africa, all right? So that's when all this West African population began to happen, was when the Israelites and Canaanites, this Israelite-Phoenician connection was docking in all these regions. And Niger is very, very similar, all right? Very similar because, as you can see, it's right here as well. It could even be speculated that up some of these rivers, came some of these ships of Tarshish, all right? Because, and the reason why I say this is because when it says these ships of Tarshish, look at what they bring. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish, right? So first of all, they were gone for 3 years. They went. It's not that big of a journey from Israel to Spain by boat. All right, you can make that happen in a couple weeks. All right, even back then, a few weeks, couple months. All right, but they were gone for 3 years, and look what they brought. Bringing gold. First of all, there's no gold in Europe. And silver, ivory. Where are you going to get ivory in Europe? They got it from the elephants in Africa, all right? Ivory and apes. There are no apes in Europe, all right? And peacocks, right? So they would go down to they would dock in Spain, and then go to Africa to get resources and bring them back to Jerusalem, bring them back to Israel. All right, that's the Israelite-Phoenician connection. All right, they were also the first to circumnavigate Africa. All right, that didn't happen till years later. But my point is that's where a lot of these first inhabitants of West Africa came from, where these Israelites, Phoenicians mixed. All right. So from there, let's go back to the history of Niger. And I want to get to the point, not about the camel. I don't really care about the camel. It starts talking about the Middle Ages, right? The Middle Ages and colonial time period of Niger. The Sultanate of Agadez was founded in 1449 and became a trading and religious center of the region. It was later conquered by the Songhai Empire in 1500. Right, so the Sultanate of Agadez was, as it says, a Berber kingdom. That was Ishmael setting up, was setting up Islam. All right, but they were later conquered by the Songhai Empire, which was a big West African empire of the Middle Ages. All right. During the late 16th century, late 1500s, the Trans-Saharan... Come on now. Yeah, I need to just stop highlighting and just read this. All right. The Trans-Saharan trade routes helped spread Islam among the tribal confederations. All right, so the Trans-Saharan trade routes is when the Muslims had the black people in slavery. That's what the Trans-Saharan slave trade was. That's what the Trans-Saharan trade routes, that's what all that was about. The Sub-Saharan slave trade, they sometimes call it. All right. The Trans-Saharan trade routes helped spread Islam among the tribal confederations. During the 17th century, incessant wars and severe droughts led to a decline in the population and economic activity of northern Niger. And as we saw, that's pretty much the Sahara. All right. So you had these wars that were happening between the Muslims, the Arabs, and Israelites, and you had Canaanites that were in that region as well. They would all these different tribes would fight each other. All right. Niger was an important economic crossroads in the empires of Songhai, Mali, Gao, and Kanem Borno, as well as a number of Hausa states claimed control over portions of the area, right? So all these intertribal conflicts, some of these being Israelite tribes, some of these being Canaanite tribes, all right? All these intertribal conflicts. During recent centuries, the nomadic Tuareg formed large confederations, pushed southward, and siding with various Hausa states, clashed with the Fulani Empire of Sokoto, which had gained control of much of the Hausa territory in the late 18th century. The area eventually became known as the Bornu Empire, which ended in 1893. All right. So for a short time, you had the Ottoman Empire claim nominal rule of the Agadez region. It became the furthest point of the empire in Africa and remained under nominal control until the French invasion of the late 19th century, right? So you had the Bornu Empire ended in 1893. The Ottomans still tried to come in and take over, but then you had the French come in for real and take over at toward the beginning of the 1900s, all right? So in the 19th century, which is the 1800s, contact with Europe began when the first European explorers, notably Mungo Park, which is a British man, and Heinrich Barth, a German man, explored the area searching for the mouth of the Niger River. Although French efforts at pacification began before 1900, dissident ethnic groups, especially the Desert Tuareg, were not subdued until 1922 when Niger became a French colony. That was 100 years ago. Niger became a French colony. That's when the start of the French colonization began, or officially began 100 years ago, all right? 102 years if we're going to be specific. But Niger's colonial history and development parallel that of the other French West African territories. As you can see, French colonial West Africa up here, all these different regions were French West Africa, right? So that's Niger, and then you have like the Ivory Coast, you have Mali, not quite Mauritania, but over there in the west, Sierra Leone, and all those regions. All right, Senegal. All right. France administered her West African colonies through a governor general at Dakar, Senegal, and governors in the individual territories, including Niger, in addition to conferring a limited form of French citizenship on the inhabitants of the territories, right? More like denizens, all right? They weren't full citizens, but they were like, okay, you can travel within these French West African territories, even up to France to learn and all that kind of stuff, All right. The 1946 French Constitution provided for decentralization of power and limited participation in political life for local advisory assemblies, right? So by 1946, they upped them rights just a little bit. They weren't treated like full people quite yet, but they give them a little bit of political liberty, all right? A further revision of the organization of overseas territories occurred with the passage of the Overseas Reform Act of July 23rd, 1956. And we see here how you have different bills being passed and different permissions being allowed up until on July 11th, 1960. France agreed to Niger becoming fully independent. So you see here that France had to agree to them becoming independent. It wasn't Niger fought for their independence and now they're free. It's France said, okay, you can be free now. All right. So we see this even after, this was 1960. All right. This was what, 64 years ago? It's not that long when it comes to the history of countries. All right. I need y'all to understand that. So even then they said, okay, you're free now. France said, okay, you're free now. All right. But check this out right here. It says Diori, and you know, Diori, he's about like a French puppet. All right. He's about like a French puppet, this Diori guy. All right. So so where are we at? Okay. So let's jump down to Diori used French advisors and troops to counter threats to his rule, right? Because France basically put him in his position as a puppet for France, all right? So Diori used French advisors and troops to counter threats to his rule, despite student and union protests against what they perceived French neocolonialism. And that's what it was. It was France still ruling over the region, but with, you know, hey, this is one of your guys leading you. Y'all are free. We promise. Like that type of stuff, all right? All right, so I'm going to jump down to on 1970. No, okay, yeah, here we go. On April the 15th, 1974, Lieutenant Colonel Sini Kunche maybe, led a military coup that ended Diori's rule. Diori was in prison until 1980 and remained under house arrest until he died in 89 at the age of 72. All right, so on 74 is when there was a coup, right, that took out Diori, right? All right, so while a period, I'm gonna read this. Well, I guess I could just read this whole first paragraph right here. The government that followed, while plagued by coup attempts of its own, survived until 1993. All right, so this government didn't last 20 years. All right, because there was all sorts of coup attempts, but it lasted 19 years. All right, while a period of relative prosperity, right, they got out from under French rule. The military government of the period allowed little free expression and engaged in arbitrary imprisonment and killing. It says arbitrary, but usually that type of stuff is not arbitrary. All right, it's probably like in a sense of over-aggressive squashing of opposing ideology type thing, like Lenin type of arbitrary imprisonment and killing. The first presidential election was held in February of 1993. That's when their first presidential election was held, all right? And the first multi-party election as well, 33 years after independence. And so that was the first, all right? That was the first multi-party election in 1993. The first municipal elections, meaning local elections, only took place in 2007. You see that right there? So, first of all, 30 years ago, they had their first presidential election, and it was, what was it, 17 years ago? They had their first, like, mayors, and what am I thinking of? Like, city councilmen. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is a new country. This is a very new country that has been plagued with, you know, colonization and slavery for centuries. All right, for centuries at this point. All right. So from there, I don't necessarily want to get into all this about the specifics of this. All right. All right. So let's get to the recent coup. The recent coup here. An attempted coup d'etat took place on the night of March 30th to 31st, 2021, a few days before the inauguration of President-elect Mohamed Bazoum. On April the 2nd, 2021, Bazoum formally took office after being sworn in. He was removed from office on July the 26th, 2023 after a coup d'etat led by members of the Presidential Guard and the armed forces. Right, so it ain't even been a year since their last coup. All right, who then announced the formation of a National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland. The next day, however, his foreign minister Hassoumi Massoudou declared himself acting head of state, substituting for Bazoum, and called on all for the coup to be defeated. On the 28th of July, General, please forgive me, I am going to butcher this name, Abdurrahmane Chiani proclaimed himself as the de facto president of the country. So it's still in disarray. It is still in disarray. All right. So this coup said, hey, the U.S. forces got to get out of here. All right. U.S. forces got to get out of here. We're not dealing with U.S. forces anymore. I was trying to see if there was anywhere that the U.S. forces stepped in, perhaps in the 90s at some point. But no, we ain't too worried about that. One thing that I do want to show here, because we see the map of where Niger is, right there, west of Lake Chad, west of the country of Chad, just north of Nigeria. So yeah, we'll get off of these. And one thing that I do want to look at, because I got a map here. This is what they called it during the colonial period. All right. So Niger would be about right up in here. All right. That's about where it would be, right up in there. And you see what they called it during, where's my mouse at? Here we go. During colonial time periods, they called it Negro land. All right. Why is that significant? I have here what is probably the best Bible dictionary. It's the one I've been using for years, called the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. All right. So why is it important that we're looking at Negro land here? All right. Let's look at a definition here in the Bible dictionary, I should say, called Ham, right? Because you may think, well, in the Bible, these are the Hamites, right? Let's see. So you go to Ham. It's on page, I believe it's going to be on 213, what I'm looking for. Yes, on page 213, when you're looking for Ham, all right? So the definition of a Ham, it says, probably means hot, right? That's probably what the word Ham means, is hot. The youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. All right, so all these people inhabiting Negro land right here, whether the people who drew these maps intentionally or unintentionally knew it, they're sitting here saying, hey, look, these all throughout Negro land, these are not Hamites. All right. It said he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians. All right, so the Egyptians are Hamites. The Ethiopians are Hamites. The Libyans are Hamites. And Canaanites. The Canaanites are indeed Hamites. All right, and there are definitely some Canaanites throughout that region. Don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot of Israelites there too. All right. There's a reason why they called it Negro land, and there's a reason why they put in Bible dictionaries. And it's not the same person who made the map that put it in the Bible dictionary, but it's the same type of scholars. You know what I'm saying? It's still the European scholars, it's still the American scholars who made these who made these study tools. All right. So they know that it's something about these people that they're not Hamites. All right. They know this. All right. They know that these people are not Hamites. So from there, let's go ahead and go to Deuteronomy 28, because all this about the trans-Saharan slave trade, the sub-Saharan slave trade, and the colonialism, the European colonialism, all that's Bible prophecy. It's all Bible prophecy. Here in Deuteronomy 1:1, it says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness, and the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel, and Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab." But the point is, this whole book of Deuteronomy is Moses' speech unto all Israel, all 12 tribes. All right, so with that context, let's go to Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28 is very pivotal when understanding the scriptures. All right, so this is what he told the Israelites. He said, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." So God said, look, if the Israelites listen to what I tell them to do, they're going to be set on high above everyone else. All right, but verse 15, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." All right. So, reading here in verse 16, "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field." Man, these African cities, these African fields are some of the worst in the whole world. All right, these curses. All right, these are curses from God. All right, so look at what it says right here in verse 24. It says, "The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come upon thee until thou be destroyed." That's the Sahara. It is not a fertile land. You know, they say that Sahara used to be fertile. That's what they say. Scientists that went into the Sahara and did some research on the land, they said it used to be fertile over here. But now it's what? Powder and dust. Now it is powder and dust. All right. Verse 25. "The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies." That's what happens with these intertribal conflicts that we read about, but then and also happened in colonization as well. "Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways from before them." You see that right there? So you may try to go out to battle with them, but you're going to end up being defeated. "And shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth." Is that not what happened to West Africa? The people got removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Whether that be through the Arabs come through with the trans-Saharan slave trade, with the sub-Saharan slave trade, or whether that be with the white people coming through with the transatlantic slave trade. All right? Either way. Either way. All right? So let's jump on down through here. Verse 36. "The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone." All right, so this is what happened whenever like the Canaanite tribes took over the Israelite tribes and put everybody in slavery, put everybody in captivity, and then sold the people. And we're going to read that in Joel 3. All right. Sold the people. "And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone." Right. So the French brought the Catholicism, whose main symbol is the wooden cross, and then you have the Islam, which is still plaguing the region. All right. The main symbol is the Kaaba stone. They say if you don't make a pilgrimage to Mecca and bow down to that Kaaba stone, you're not a real Muslim. That's what they'll tell you. That's what they'll tell you in Islam. All right. All right, so from there, verse 49, "The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth." Right, so the symbol, and I'll show this on the flyer too, the symbol of Imperial France was the eagle. All right, as swift as the eagle flieth. And what's the symbol of America? The eagle. We just talked about that America is withdrawing the U.S. troops. I mean, they've been there for a while. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Man, the people didn't understand French when the French came. They didn't understand no French. All right. Nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. They didn't treat them like full citizens. All right. They did not treat the people like full citizens. All right. So, from there. I could just go into 68 just for the point of it. Slave ships are in the Bible. All right. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, meaning slavery again with ships. All right. I'll go ahead and prove that real quick. Egypt, that's what it means in the scripture. It means slavery. Even the word, because you say, well, it doesn't say Egypt in Hebrew. It says Mizraim. That's what it says right there. All right. It says Mizraim, which means constraints. All right. Means to be held captive. That's what the word Egypt means. It means the house of bondage. As you read here in Exodus 20:2. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. All right. So it says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. He's saying the Lord's going to bring you into the house of bondage again with ships. Slavery on ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there, meaning once you got off the slave ship, you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And no man shall buy you. No man's going to be able to buy you out of slavery. That was always the custom. If you read Leviticus 25, that was always the custom. Buying your next of kin out of slavery. God said that's not going to happen this time. Everybody, man and woman, is going to be slaves. Bondmen and bondwomen. All right. So, from there, let's get specifically into Joel 3. This is what ended up happening in the region of all of West Africa, but Niger, whatever you want to call it specifically. Joel 3. Starting in verse 1. And this is what we starting to see right now. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, meaning bring them back out of slavery. Verse 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. That is the northern part of the West Bank. All right. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel. God is going to bring judgment in World War III for his people, for the Israelites, whom they have scattered among the nations, right? Like taking the people of Niger, scattering them around the world, right? Or even into Niger, right? And they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Is that not what they did? They split Jerusalem right down the middle, saying, hey, the Jewish people are going to take this half, the Muslim people are going to take this half, all right? And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Right? They used to have parties and rape the young women of Judah, right? The young black girls. And they would also have a boy for a breeder. Right? They would take a man and make him a mandingo breeder amongst the slaves, right? To produce more slaves. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? That would be your Canaanite tribes. And all the coast of Palestine, as the Wikipedia article said, the Ottomans, right? The Palestinians, the Arabs. Will ye render me a recompense? He said, you trying to pay me back? And if ye recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly and pleasant things, and you have robbed me. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold to the Grecians, right? So that's what happened throughout all of West Africa. You had these Canaanites and these Muslims, these Arabs come and take the people, whether after they defeated them in war, whatever the case may be, and then they sold them to the Europeans, right? That's the Grecians here. That ye might remove them far from their border. You see that right there. So that's exactly what happened. Spread to the four corners of the earth, like what we read in Deuteronomy 28. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sold them, right? So the Israelites waking up, all right? And will return your recompense upon your own head. You see it right there. So God said, look, I'm going to judge you. Once I get them back right, I'm going to judge you, you Africans, you Arabs, you Edomites, you Europeans, right? So from there, and again, we'll read this here in Zephaniah. Let you know, because you may say, well, that's all Hamites, ain't none of God's people in Africa. You don't know the scriptures. You don't know the scriptures. All right? So in Zephaniah 3 is what I'm looking for. Zephaniah 3, I believe, yes, verse 10. It says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. You see that right there? So from beyond Ethiopia, not just in Ethiopia, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. So the rivers of Ethiopia go from, first of all, the Nile starts in North Africa. It goes all the way down into East Africa and Central Africa. So beyond that would be West and South Africa. All right, that's beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. In that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings, wherein thou hast transgressed against me, right? Meaning we're going to be forgiven for our sins. For then I will take away out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in thy pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. You see right there? Because God has removed all 12 tribes far from his holy mountain. Right, so we can't boast and be proud of, hey, well, I'm from Israel, you know, nothing can touch me. I'm planted in God's land. No, we can't say that because we already got destroyed. You see what I'm saying? We already got removed from the land. We can't rejoice in the land. All right, we can't take pride in where we're from because we're not even where we're from. We're not even where we are originally from. All right. I will also leave in thee, or excuse me, I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people. You see it right there? So them afflicted and poor people in Africa, a lot of them's God's people. A lot of them are the dispersed Israelites, the afflicted and poor people in Africa, including Niger, whatever you want to call it. And they shall trust in the name of the Lord. And God's people going to come back to him. The remnant of Israel shall do no iniquity, nor speak lies, right? So, and I'm speaking specifically about the country of Niger, right? But this goes for all 12 tribes scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, all right? The remnant of Israel shall do no iniquity. You see that right there? So the people that God's going to save are not going to be doing sin. You got to come out of your sin if you want God to save you, just straight up. Nor speak lies. Neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. You see that right there? So once we do all that we are commanded to do, God will fight for us. It's the same thing it said in Deuteronomy 28, in the blessings portion. All right? God will fight for us if we do everything he said to do. None shall make them afraid. All right? So from there, let's go to Isaiah 11, because it also mentions some of the dispersed in Africa in Isaiah 11. All right? Isaiah 11, and let's start with 10. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, all right, meaning coming from Judah, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, shall the nations seek. And if you've been following along with Bible History 101, you know that what we're about to read here in 11 and 12 that's the Gentiles that it's talking about, right? The nations. And his rest shall be glorious, right? So the kingdom will be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, right? So that's modern day Iraq and eastern Syria, eastern Turkey, right? And from Egypt, right? Egypt is in Africa. It's in northeast Africa. And from Pathros. Pathros is southern Egypt, modern day like Sudan region. And from Cush, Cush being Ethiopia. All right, so those are all African countries that God's people is dispersed into. And as we read in Zephaniah, it's even beyond Ethiopia. All right, and from Elam, that's in Iran, and from Shinar, that is Kuwait, and from Hamath is Syria. Right, so why am I mentioning these Middle Eastern places? It's because notice what it said about the Ottomans establishing the trade route through Niger. They ended up selling slaves in the trans-Saharan slave trade, all right, in the sub-Saharan slave trade. They started dispersing Israelites that had been conquered throughout Middle Eastern countries, specifically places like India and even sending on some as far as China, all right? And that's not necessarily history that we've got into, but that I believe it was the Tang dynasty when that happened. But that's a lesson for another time. But the point is that all these places are where God's people have been scattered throughout Africa and the Middle East. All right, these aren't the only places. It says there's Jews in every nation. But the point that I'm making here is that it mentions these places specifically as places where we got to go and wake the people up. All right, where God's going to deliver His people from. All right, verse 12. And He shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So Isaiah, he said, look, I mentioned these specific places, but in verse 12, he's letting us know, look, the outcast of Israel are in the four corners of the earth. The dispersed of Judah are in the four corners of the earth. All right? It's in all nations. It's in every nation. All right? From there, I had another scripture in mind that's slipping my mind at this point. With Isaiah 11, I can't even remember. I was thinking about it while I was in Zephaniah. We are about reaching that time, and I'll close it out soon enough. But understand, man, when it comes to the history of these countries, a lot of it does just go back to Bible prophecy. A lot of it does just go back to Deuteronomy 28. And it's all going to come together in the end, as far as God's going to deliver His people from all these different countries. All right, and the oppressor shall oppress no more. All right, the wicked will not rule anymore. All right. So from there, yeah, I'm still trying to think. This is something that just come to mind was Matthew 24. I believe he does say from the four corners right here. In Matthew 24, when he's talking about His return. Yeah. Matthew 24 and starting with 30. Okay. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Right? We all gonna see it. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. All right? We're all going to see it. We're all going to see that wonderful and glorious day. And He shall send His angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together His elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. All right, so it's saying the same things we just read. He's going to gather the outcast of Israel. He's going to gather His elect from one end of heaven to the other, from the four winds, meaning from all over the world, from the four corners. All right. So, including places like Niger, like Niger, if that's what you want to call it. All right. But yeah, going back to Deuteronomy 28, this is another thing that comes to mind. Even the name of the country. The name of the country is a byword. All right. The name of the country is a byword in Deuteronomy 28 and verse 37. This is one of the curses. All right. This is one of the curses. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all the nations whither the Lord shall lead thee. That name is the same as the Latin word for black. That's all Niger means. All right, it's just the Latin word for black. All right, it's a byword. To call yourself Niger or Nigerian or anything like that, it's a byword. All right, it's the same root word where the N word come from. All right, it's a byword. It's a derogatory term. It's not what God calls it at all. All right. So even like, because we one thing that kept coming up was I believe it was the Tuareg. They could have called the country something like that. They could have called the country something like Borneo, right, or anything like Songhai. They could have called it that. They could have called it anything that had to do with the history of the land, but they didn't. No, they just called it a byword. All right. Among all nations, where the Lord shall lead thee. Now they sitting in the UN going by a byword. You see what I'm saying? Like it's just foolishness. It's just foolishness. We gotta come out the ways of the world, man. We gotta come out the ways of the world. They could have called it a goddess. They could have called it a goddess. You know what I'm saying? But no, they didn't even make that the capital. Even though that there's a big history in the Agadas region, as we was reading. Crazy, man, crazy. I'm trying to think, because I know that this same, like, it's the Latin word for black. We read it this past week, and when we was reading in Bible History 101, we was reading in Acts 13. They talk about Simeon called Niger, right? Now there were in the church that was in Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon that was called Niger. You see it right there. And Lucius of Cyrene. And Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul, right? So Cyrene is Libya, right? But Simeon was called Niger. That's the Latin word for black, right? Simeon was very dark skinned. They called him black, all right? So from there, I don't want to end it on that necessarily. That's just something that popped into my mind as far as the byword, all right? The byword there. In Revelation, because this is what it's all about. It's all about the Word of God, man. It's all about waking the people up to the understanding of the Word, all right? So in Revelation 7 and verse 4, so this is, I'll start with 3. It says, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, to have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads, right? So how is God going to seal his servants? He's going to seal his servants with this right here in Isaiah. In Isaiah 8 and 16. This is the seal that it's talking about in Revelation 7. Isaiah 8 and 16. It says, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. All right, so this is among my students. That's what disciples mean. All right, seal the law among my students, among my followers. All right. Now I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Right. So you have the 144,000. All right, sealed with the law. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. That's your so-called African Americans. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000. That's your so-called Seminole or Creek family Indians. Of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. That would be your First Nations of Canada, but also your Native Americans here in America. Of the tribe of Asher were sealed 12,000. That would be like your Colombians and Brazilians, all those South Americans. Of the tribe of Naphtali were sealed 12,000, other than Naphtali, which is Argentinians and Chileans. Of the tribe of Manasseh were sealed 12,000. That would be your Cubans. Of the tribe of Simeon were sealed 12,000. That would be your Dominicans. Of the tribe of Levi were sealed 12,000. That would be your Haitians. Of the tribe of Issachar were sealed 12,000. That would be your Mexicans. Of the tribe of Zebulun were sealed 12,000. That would be your Central Americans, like Guatemalans, Panamanians, Ecuadorians, El Salvadorians. Of the tribe, not Ecuadorians. Ecuadorians would be Asher, but El Salvadorians would be Zebulun. Of the tribe of Joseph were sealed 12,000. Joseph here is also another name for Ephraim. Ephraim being the Puerto Ricans. Of the tribe of Benjamin were sealed 12,000. That would be your West Indians or Jamaicans. All right. So, whenever I was just listening to tribes there, I was listening to them in the West. All right. You do have your equivalents in the East. All right, but we're in the West right now. But with Niger or Niger, most of them would probably be Judah. All right. Maybe Benjamin or Levi, but mostly would probably be Judah. All right. The Israelites in that region, I should say. After the 12,000 of each tribe, after the 144,000, After this I beheld and lo, a great multitude which no man can number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. You see that right there? So these 144,000 are going to lead this multitude which no man can number. All right? Out of every nation, of all nations. All right? So that's going to include people from Niger as well. All right? They got to come with the seal, which is the law of God in their minds. All right? They got to be keeping the commandments like everyone else. All right? Like all the other Israelites that's going to come to the truth. They got to be keeping the commandments. All right? So anybody here watching from Niger, hey, you could be an Israelite. Hey, keep the commandments. Only God can tell if you're going to be delivered. All right? But there are going to be some people there. My point, out of every nation, out of all nations. All right?